in every company I've worked with or worked in, you struggle with culture at one point or another, just by nature of the fact of where you might be in the growth of the organization, whether you've acquired multiple companies and brought them in, and with multiple companies you have multiple teams, and you've got all of their experiences coming to the table, and all their bias coming to the table, and like you've got to figure out ways to break down that barrier. You have to be really intentional about how you go about building the culture, and you have to be really mindful, and everyone on the leadership team has to be on board with it, and you have to figure out who your culture carriers are who can also be brought in and can help.
Welcome to Stickology. We often talk about building great products, but the real secret to sustainable innovation isn't just the perfect roadmap, it's the culture and the team that you build to execute it. In today's global environment, the challenge for leaders is how to create a sense of belonging and psychological safety across diverse teams and professional norms. My guest today is Laura Neville. She's on a mission to solve this challenge. Laura is the current Chief Product Officer at Catalyst Inc., the leading global organization working to advance gender equity and inclusion in the workplace. Before that, Laura spent years as Chief Product Officer at EverFi, where she oversaw the massive expansion of digital learning platforms that addressed critical topics such as financial education, health and wellness, workforce readiness, and STEM, guiding the company through an immense period of growth and a successful exit. Today, we'll trace Laura's journey from leading product development in the dynamic edtech space to driving systemic change at Catalyst. We'll explore the traits of an inclusive culture, how to lead remote teams effectively, and impactful strategies for employee loyalty and retention. Laura, thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome, Stephen. Thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you. I'm really grateful.
Well, let's dig in.
Great.
Over the years, you've led teams across multiple geographies. How have you built a sense of belonging, and what regular practices do you use to keep your teams connected?
That's a great question, Stephen, and I will tell you, I'm constantly thinking about it because it is the crux of getting kind of the most out of your team. And there's kind of a couple of things. One is my approach has always been to try to be really incredibly authentic. So lead with authenticity with my team. This is something I've learned over the course of my career. Of it's okay to let the team see who you are and what you're going through, and that you're actually a real human being and not just a leader. With dispersed teams, it's really important to bring the teams together on a regular basis. So whether that is, scheduling a Friday coffee, 30 minutes together, or meeting, in an informal basis, which gives people an opportunity to connect together around things that are not work related. And this became really important, and something that we really practiced a lot when COVID hit, and we went from being physically in the office together, being able to have those conversations in the kitchen or at the coffee machine, to how do we make sure that we continue to connect with one another on a frequent basis, and to be able to continue to build those relationships. And so done a couple things. I really do, I try to focus on bringing the entire team together on a monthly basis. And that's a little bit more formal, but it gives me a chance to bring the team up to speed on the state of the business, what we're doing, deliver kind of key information that they need to be aware of, so that they're not getting caught off guard at the larger town hall meetings, but that they feel like they're in the know and they're coming along on the journey with us. We also use that time to spotlight work that's going on throughout the team. So both here at Catalyst and in my previous lives, I've been responsible for overseeing pretty large teams. And so in teams that are responsible for different disciplines across the product development continuum. And so it's really important, I think, to give teams an opportunity to showcase and spotlight the work that they're doing. It's important for knowledge share. I think it's really important for the entire team, regardless of the silo in which you work, to be aware of what the broader team is responsible for and what our remit is. And also, I think, continuing to learn on the job and hear what's going on breeds innovation, it breeds curiosity, it hopefully brings that next really good idea to the table. And it also might, encourage someone who has been dabbling with interest in an area to actually step forward and say, hey, I'd like to participate. And so those are kind of just two examples. I also make it a point to meet with my leadership team on a weekly basis. So we come together as a group, and then I also meet one-on-one on a bi-weekly basis. So it's a lot of touch points, but it's really important, I think, to instilling the sense of community within the organization.
I love that. It sounds like a lot of transparency. It also sounds like an opportunity to celebrate people at any given time, right? And to give people new opportunities. I love that. What are the non-negotiable traits of a truly inclusive and high-performing culture in your mind?
From my perspective, there's kind of three key things. One, respect for what each team member brings to the table, both from a professional perspective, but also from their life experiences. Being respectful of the individuals who are around the table with you and what they know and what they've done over the course of their career and what they bring to bear is really important. And you never know kind of what's going on in somebody else's life. So being respectful of the totality of the individual, I think, is really important. Two, honesty. I think you've got to be really honest and transparent. And so I've really tried to do that. In a position of leadership, it's hard to be transparent all the time. There are some times when you can't be totally transparent with your team, and I would say that's the hardest. But I've always led with honesty and said, I can't bring you into the circle on this, but when I can, I will. I've also been honest about, if I know something, if I come from a position of expertise in an area, or if I don't. That's why you hire really great people to work with you, because you don't know everything. So just being honest. And then building trust. If you don't have trust, it can kill the culture faster than it takes you to spell the word trust. And if you don't have your team members' trust, it's really hard. It's really hard to drive your mission forward. It's really hard to get the work done. It's really hard because you don't have an engaged team and you don't have an engaged workforce. And it will slowly over time erode what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I concur with all that. And at the end of the day, I think that the more that you can lead by example, the more that you're going to see people following that very example.
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge of building a psychologically safe culture when leading teams across different countries and different professional norms?
That's a great question. I have been thinking a lot about this idea. It's not even an idea or a concept. It is true. Psychological safety. What does it mean to be psychologically safe in the workplace? And it is, first of all, you need to make sure that you've got strong relationships with your team members, whether it's your peers or your boss or the people that are reporting into you. You need to make the time to get to know them as individuals and understand what impacts them and influences within the workplace and then outside of the workplace. I think another thing I would say is leading from a place of understanding and willingness to adapt. And I say that because you need to be willing to be agile and willing to pivot as it needs. It may not be something you totally agree with, but being a leader is you need to kind of really focus on what the end goal is and lead the team to get there. And sometimes, my way is not always the highway. And then, the third thing I would say is leading by example. Walk the walk and talk the talk. There's not one thing that I don't ask my team to do that I wouldn't do myself. And it's something that I've done my entire career. whether it was like, opening up a computer way back when I first got started and trying to figure out how in the world to replace memory to, now I'm up to my eyeballs in AI and trying to figure it out because, that's where the world's going and we've all got to get on board. And so, I really do try to lead by example as much as I can.
To that end, can you share a story where a team's strong sense of belonging directly led to successful product innovation?
Yeah, it's funny, Stephen. I was agonizing over, me. This is not my most comfortable state, but I was talking to one of my team members who was also part of my former team at Everfi, and she reminded me, and she said, you know, you need to remember what happened during COVID, and we, I remember it distinctly. March 13th. I was supposed to, the week before, go over to Europe and meet with a company that we had just acquired, and we were working through some pretty critical integration items. Obviously, that trip got canceled. We all went home. We barely took home what we needed to start working from home. And then pretty quickly we realized that, this wasn't going to be a 2-week work from home situation, and then we're all going back to the office. Our business at Everfi was designing and delivering impactful digital education to learners of all ages. And we had an opportunity to really try to pivot. And so we were challenged to create a brand new product. You worked with us on this in a former life within a 6-week period to design it, to build it, and to launch it. And we were able to do that because I knew the team and the team knew me. And they knew that I would not ask of them something that wasn't critically important to the lifeline of the business, and also that I didn't believe we could do, and that I was right there with them. And so we all linked arms and we went after it, and we codenamed it, and we built it, and we got it to market. And we actually got it to market, I think, like a hair before the 6-week period, but it was incredible. The team trusted me. They knew that I was in it with them, and we knew that we could do it together because we had an incredible team and we had very strong relationships that we had built over time.
That's a great example and something that you don't talk about often, but I think is a really important part of being a great leader is someone who not only builds those trusts, but also has people that will follow them. And if one thing I've seen from your career is you've had people who have followed you from company to company, because not only have you built trust, but you've obviously led in a way that is authentic and certainly very appealing to them. So I love that.
Yeah, I love it too. It's you do invest a lot of time in human capital, and especially when you work together so long, you get to know one another. You get to know what's going on. You're there during big major life events, and so and people who either I've had an opportunity to bring them with me, or I've recommended them for those next steps in their career, and that's kind of fun too, to be able to do that, to be able to see them jump into that next level and soar. So that's probably the most rewarding thing.
Beyond compensation, what's the single most impactful strategy of an organization that they can use to cultivate employee loyalty and retention in your mind?
It is something that as a leader, you gotta constantly be thinking about, because you're not always going to be in a position where you can recognize someone's contributions by giving them a salary increase or promoting them to the next level. You'd like to be able to do that, but there's not always that opportunity, whether you're in a recession or the company is struggling to meet numbers or whatever it might be. It's you have to think creatively and think about other ways to recognize those individuals and their contributions. And so there's a couple of things. You know, one one thing that I try to do, and I've talked a little bit about this earlier, is just make sure that everybody understands the mission and feels part of it and understands what their role is in the mission. And that is, you know, that's pride of ownership, of playing a really key part in driving that mission or that goal forward or that project forward. Um, and then the other thing is trying to give team members opportunities where they wouldn't normally get them, or maybe they'd have to wait much longer in their career to get them. So, trying to constantly be thinking about, maybe that younger team member who hasn't had exposure to the senior leadership team, giving them an opportunity to come in and present their work. Scary for them, but great exposure for them to be able to come in and hear directly from the senior leaders. Or maybe it's an opportunity to, have a team member participate in a thought leadership opportunity. So externally facing, to be able to actually be the face of the organization in their space, and to be able to be that credible voice at the table. It also might be, learning and development opportunities, putting a little bit more investment. If you can't invest in the compensation side of the house, investing in skills development. So that's everything from, small LinkedIn learning type classes, or maybe going to attend a big industry event that they normally wouldn't have an opportunity to do. But because, that's something you could do for them that wasn't directly tied to compensation, that's another way to help to grow and demonstrate your commitment to those individuals.
And not only will that grow them, but that's something that they will remember in most cases for a long time, right?
Well, I mean, I know too, there's nothing like getting out there and being in a room or a conference center and hearing from other people to stimulate and re-energize you and help you think kind of bigger picture beyond just your day-to-day, about what you could be doing differently or your organization could be doing differently. And it just personally, and I hope for the same for my team members, it's that kind of extra spark when you're kind of feeling pretty dragged down that gets you re-energized and refocused, and wanting to continue to drive things forward.
It's inspiring. I mean, that's ultimately, I think, a lot of seeing what others are doing and seeing what the industry is doing. And I love your example about giving them an opportunity to present in front of an executive, right? One, it stretches them, right? In most cases, it's going to require them to really push themselves a little bit further. And number two, it's giving them an opportunity to be seen at a level that they wouldn't be otherwise, right?
Yeah, and it's, I think that is ultimately one of the goals, right? Is that continued development. And as leaders, we get opportunities all the time to continue to develop, whether it's, meeting with our board of advisors or sitting in on a board of directors meeting and getting that exposure, or, engaging at a much higher level. Providing those opportunities to your team member to do that are not only giving them the confidence to be able to engage in those types of situations, but it also helps them start to formulate what they want their career trajectory to be, and maybe what they think their path might be or might not be.
That's a gift. That's a really nice gift, and that goes, in my opinion, compensation's a really important thing, but that's a gift that you can't really compete with. So, can you tell me about the last organizational rule or sacred cow that you challenged because you felt it was inhibiting your team's ability to innovate?
Every organization is dealing with this right now, right? It's the return to the office. We went fully remote globally, and now, we're trying to get people, and we're not alone, but every organization is trying to get people back into the office. And that is, everyone is struggling with that. Some are more successful than others. That is one thing where, because I have led geographically dispersed teams for so long, and have oftentimes had to go where the talent is, that is something that I have kind of gone to the mat for key people that might have fallen within the range of return to work, and worked, with the team on that.
Our expectations for decades or centuries was, seats and butts and seats. Yeah. No
Yep.
seats and butts. That'd
No
be
cheeks and butts. I know.
but I think it was proven over the course of a handful of years that you can run an effective team and you can run an effective business without that being the case. It's a trade-off. It's a
Yeah.
trade-off, right? And um, the reality is that people gain some flexibility, and the company sometimes can gain efficiency. What it loses in many cases is that cultural component.
Yeah. And that's really hard. And it's the cultural component is very real, right? Like, it's something that we have struck. I in every company I've worked with or worked in, you struggle with culture at one point or another, just by nature of the fact of where you might be in the growth of the organization, whether you've acquired multiple companies and brought them in, and with multiple companies you have multiple teams, and you've got all of their experiences coming to the table, and all their bias coming to the table, and like you've got to figure out ways to break down that barrier. But same now. It's just culture is you have to be really intentional about how you go about building the culture, and you have to be really mindful, and everyone on the leadership team has to be on board with it, and you have to figure out who your culture carriers are, who can also be brought in and can help. But it's really hard when you're fully remote. So
That it is way more challenging. Here's a trick or a hard question, maybe an easy one. What's the best piece and worst piece of professional advice that you've received, and why?
early, like years ago, as a woman, I came into my career, and at a time when it was it was really challenging. I mean, you had to really really work more, sometimes time and a half, and work harder, to make your way up the ranks and to get your seat at the table. And you also, at least I did, kind of brought this facade to the table. I'm very professional, I'm very polished, I'm very serious. And I'm also, an introvert at heart, which not a lot of people know, but I am. And so, me being in my introverted, kind of trying to recharge space, can sometimes come off as reserved or closed off. And so, one of the best pieces of professional advice I got was, it's okay for them to see beyond that professional facade. In fact, try it out and let them see more. Let them understand what's going on in your life. And so, it's something I practice daily, because it's not comfortable for me, just by the way I've grown up, to, kind of I'm not a person who'll put it all out there, but putting pieces out there here and there, and letting people actually see who you are, and what makes you tick, and what makes you quirky, or what your weird obsession is, or a challenge you've had. Like, you won't know how people are going to react to you unless you give them something to react to. So there's my sage piece of advice. You won't know how people are going to react until you give them something to react to.
I think that's really good advice. All right, here's my final question for you. What's your advice for a new leader who wants to build a team that not only delivers product results, but also models the inclusive culture that Catalyst advocates for globally?
So my advice I would give to a new leader is, um, you need to take the time to make sure that you really understand the problem that you're trying to solve, and that as you develop the strategy around whatever it is you're trying to do, that you bring people along with you and you give people an opportunity to contribute and to provide their insights or their ideas. And so I think that that's really important. The other thing, your team needs to understand not just the vision, but why. The why. Why is it important? And how are we going to get there together? Like, what is the plan? What's the roadmap? And the more clarity you can bring to the table, and I like to keep it simple. I like to kiss it. Keep it simple and direct. I think in headlines, I present in headlines. If your headline doesn't explain what you're trying to do, then they're not going to get it. So try to be as clear and as direct and as authentic as you can in setting the stage of what you're trying to do together, and then what the path forward is and what each team member's contribution is expected to be. And then finally, you need to make sure that you acknowledge the contributions of the team and you hold those contributions up and you give credit where credit is due, and make sure that the people that are higher than you and higher than them know exactly what they've done and how they have contributed to bring product to market, strategy to life, whatever it may be.
I love that. I love that. I couldn't say it better. I couldn't say it better. And I hope everyone, I hope lots of people hear that because it's great advice. Um, Laura, this was super fun. I really, really appreciate your time and insights and wisdom and putting yourself out there,
Well,
especially when you may not like doing that. So
I
thank you.
know. Well, thank you, Stephen. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. And it's a good thing to stop and reflect and to think back, and to remember the good and the bad, because the bad and how you got through the bad is what got you to the good. So I appreciate the chance to be reflective and to share a little bit of my experience, and maybe it'll help somebody else.
I'm sure it will. That was a really insightful conversation with Laura Neville. Here are my 3 takeaways. Number 1, when we lead with authenticity, it's much easier to build trust. Be a real person, not just a boss. Sharing your human side makes people more comfortable, feel more safe, and results in stronger connections. Number 2, we can cultivate loyalty by investing in growth, not just pay. True employee loyalty comes from showing you care about their future. Give them an opportunity that they wouldn't normally get, like presenting to an executive or funding advanced training. These development gifts are often more memorable and impactful than a simple raise. And number 3, focus on the why and always give credit. Leaders must communicate the core mission clearly and simply, explaining why the work matters and how the team will achieve it together. Laura provided some great examples that every leader can implement tomorrow. I hope this conversation was as impactful for you, the listener, as it was for me.